So with that under our belts, we want to make sure we know something about anatomy. But only, or not only, but primarily, anatomy can be a fun way to spend time with family and pets, I suppose. But we want it to be functional. We want to make sure it's helping us get better structure and better gesture. We want it to work on that functional level to make our process better and ring true from beginning to end, from initial mark to finish rendering. And we want to bring in the fact that we're doing this not to just learn dead material. We're trying to create beautiful, meaningful, powerful, challenging, whatever adjective you want on it. If you're a realist, probably it's beauty. There's a strong aesthetic aspect to it. If you're a modern artist, I don't understand those people. No, I'm kidding. Then it may be to challenge the status quo, to break away from the aesthetics. Whatever. Okay. So the aesthetics, we want to be able to do better designed work, more beautiful, more powerful work, all that stuff. Pick your adjectives. So the anatomy then has a purpose to it. And we don't want to forget that. It's real easy to get into these how-to classes and you just work on whatever the process is in the class and you forget why. So make sure when you're working in any class, not just this class, try and find the ideas, the processes, the tricks of the trade that help you, the understanding of the subject matter better, that help you make better choices about this idea, get more solid realism, and this idea to bring more life, so that the truth of that and the truth of this, and then how does that work in terms of aesthetics, in terms of what I find beautiful, brighter colors, rounder shapes, more fluid design, more formal, stiffer, whatever it is. How can we take the information that's presented to us in the body, in the human body, with all we know about it, and become better artists in our work? And so how do we do aesthetics with that? So we're not doing an Echo Shea class, although they're immensely valuable to do. What we're trying to do is we're going to pick out of that, and we could, ideally, every muscle we look at would have gesture and structure. We're going to have to cherry pick. We're going to pick the big ideas. So it's not going to be near as comprehensive as something like this. We're going to pick and choose so that we can reinforce the gesture and the structure and build an aesthetic style of vision out of the world around us. So what we want to do then is we want to look at the anatomy, the muscle and the bone, and see why it's there, and look at it a little bit rather than the Latin names of it. We'll talk a little bit about that stuff. But what I'm interested in is why the muscles are useful. And I want to look at the engineering of it. So why is the structure it is? What's it doing? How does it change? And then once I understand the whys of the anatomy, why those muscles and bones go together the way they go, I'm going to have a big picture of what anatomy does for the structure. Because our structure the body is only designed for two purposes: to be able to hold perfectly still, so you can hide in the grass and the dire hyena doesn't eat you or whatever it is out there. And you can run like hell if it does find you. So we want to be able to understand how and why the body is stable, and then how to move it into action. And then hopefully be able to bring that into the poses, to feel that when we draw something beautiful, and I can do these beautiful poses I've practiced for years, how do we give that sense that that's just a moment in time? Most art forms, most styles are capturing just a moment in time. And so the implication is, even though this drawing will be on that page forever, for hundreds of years, hopefully in some gallery, that the model moved out of that fairly quickly. That beautiful sunset is in the museum for hundreds of years, but it only stayed there for a moment or a few minutes, and then it became a different composition, different color, different shapes, different relationships. So there's always the implication of time involved in our work. And so I've always been interested in that. So I actually oftentimes do action figures that are actually in motion. You may or may not want to do that, but even if you're laying on the couch, there's an idea that it's about to move, or even if it's a dead corpse, there's an idea that it once moved. There's an implication that that pose can change. So how do we bring back that potential energy, the kinetics that are waiting to change, that are about to force a change, and the artist, through a strength of will, holds that moment in stasis? How do we pack that information rather than just having it, a dead, sculpted out of rock that's never going to move and never have? So we want to make sure when we work with our muscle and bone truths that they imply that stability and that impulse for action. So in terms of engineering, we want to see, again, the stability and the mobility. These two ideas. So we're going to look a little bit about the whole figure is built as an architectural element. And then we'll look at the bones and the muscles and how they move. And they move out of as levers, basically. If we're going to get something to move, the human body, the machine we call the human body, has these levers. A lever is just a very simple machine. And it has three classes. And it's all based on three ideas. You've got a fulcrum. That's the point where things move, the seesaw. And then you've got a load, and you've got the effort to move that load, the force that moves that. So you push that down, it moves that up. And the trick with levers and the trick with any machine is a machine is designed to make movement and specifically moving a load easier. So we have these great big machines that can pick up tons of earth and that kind of stuff, cranes that can bring loads over, and we've got all these. They're all based on lever. And the idea is the longer the lever is and the farther out the effort, the force is. So if I get a nice long plank here, I put this little box over here, or this big heavy box. The longer I make the lever, the less effort it takes to move it. So if my lever is only this long, I got to push down. If I'm 200 pounds and that's 200 pounds, I got to put 200 pounds of weight to move it. If I go twice as far, I only have to do 100 pounds. Go twice as far as that, only 50 pounds. Eventually, I can just move it like this and pretend I'm strong. So then if we mix these up, we get the different classes. First class. Second class, that's a wheelbarrow. Lift it up. And third class. See if I can get this right. Here's the lever. That's the fulcrum. That's where it moves. Here's the load out here. And then here's the effort. This is the least efficient one. And this is how most of the body is made. Here's the fulcrum. Here's the fulcrum. Here's the fulcrum. That's where it moves from. Here's the load out here. And then here's the effort here. The bicep comes over here and attaches and pulls it up. And we move it. Notice how inefficient that is. Notice that here's the fulcrum. Here's the load. Here's the effort. Here's the deltoid coming over and lifting up. Actually down to about halfway. Pulling up. Very inefficient. So the body, because it's self-contained, it's a leverage system, but it's a very inefficient leverage system. The jaw. We end up using these two generally less efficient choices, or I'm sorry, these two generally less efficient choices because this gets short. But in general, not working. What I can do is come out here and lift up and help, but that's not very efficient either. So the body has this great impulse for action, this incredible flexibility and potential agility for action, but not very efficient action, which means the body needs to work on some intuition, the ergonomics. It's got to make sure that it's not isolating. Notice, I tried to pick up that, I tried to pick up that heavy weight and I hurt my back. Look at the lever. All the weight's way out here, including the weight of the body, and the fulcrum's way back here, and those little tiny muscles are trying to hold it up. Or I'm over my drawing board working like this, and these little tiny muscles are trying to pick up this big weight, and I get a sore neck. Or I got to go to the chiropractor because I wrenched my neck. And so when we try and work the body in isolation, it doesn't work very well because the leverage system is so inefficient. What happens then, and the lesson for us is, the body conspires so that if I have to do something, then I'm going to try and use the whole body to do it. Think of athletics. The really beautiful athletes have learned how to make their body work beautifully, efficiently, so the whole body system helps to move that load, whether the load is the body itself or something else, a shot putter or a discus thrower. And so when the whole body moves in the action, then we have a much more efficient action. You've got a more powerful machine because you've got several little levers working together. You're working through, notice, not stability, but through momentum now, the best of action, where we're using the laws of momentum with. We're not pulling dead weight, dragging across the floor. We're flinging it up and allowing that momentum to carry. And so the whole body, when it works to move that one thing, it works beautifully together, and you can do amazing things with it. And so that's what we want to do then when we're drawing. We want to make sure that when we're drawing the body, everything is in relationship to the whole, no matter what the action is. Throwing a punch, pushing a wheelbarrow, reaching down, reclining on a couch, whatever it is, the whole body's involved. The whole body has composed itself to make that action or to move from action to inaction, to make that efficient and ergonomic, and that's what makes it beautiful. When everything works together, we define that as beautiful generally. When all the colors are in harmony, we tend to say those are beautiful colors because they're all working together. They're all influenced by each other. They're all informing each other. Same way with a pose. If you do this, everything's kind of working against. But when you do something where there's long fluid lines, where things flow naturally through S-curves or lovely fluid zigzags, we feel a clean movement from this to that. Everything's working in composition, and we find it literally more beautiful to look at rather than this kind of pose. So what we want to do then is we want to make sure when we're composing our body, when we're trying to draw these lovely, beautiful, powerful poses, everything's in relationship to everything else, because that's the way the body works most beautifully. And through our experience and our intuitive knowledge of that, we find that more pleasing, more satisfying, more truthful than just doing this. And they'll buy into your art, and literally buy into your art, big bucks. So that's when it's successful. We find these aesthetic truths because it's the way our experience of life. It's the function of life. Form follows function. Aesthetics follow form. And so we find someone more beautiful when their features are even, where the mechanics or the mathematics of proportions are more even. If one eye is a little droopy, or some of the hair is missing, or something's a little out of whack, we find that not as beautiful. Because why is that exactly? All it means is it's biology, it's health. That's better breeding stock, whether it's male or female. Those great looking models up there, they're young, they're healthy, and they're even featured. what's here is over here for the most part. We find that more beautiful because we know on some biological level we can propagate the race that way. So it's all, the beauty is always a product of the functionality of things. In other cultures, if you were big and fat, if you had a low center of gravity, now we want little here, big here, we want a high center of gravity. But before, when there was a scarcity of resources, we weren't sure we'd be able to kill the bison or grow the crops. Being fat meant you were healthy, successful, you could survive to move things along. So when we understand why muscles work and make sure the whole, and bone, and make sure the whole body is conspiring around that truth in one way or another, the whole body is going to look more successful on your page, on your canvas. That's what we want. So there's very practical reasons for this, but we don't care about that. We just want to make it work. And all we're going to do is we're going to have the criteria, does it ring true? When we're drawing muscle and bone, line and tone, mark making, does it ring true? This is the more or less why it rings true, but this is what we're going to work from. And so having a little bit understanding of that, or if you're interested in the subject, a lot of understanding of that can help.